Hello and welcome to Smart Indian Agriculture on the Federal.com. I am Vivian Fernandez. Can digital technologies transform Indian agriculture? That's what we'll discuss today. Fragmented supply chains, small land holdings, low farm yields, meager farmer incomes, and increasing rural smartphone penetration offer significant opportunities for digitization of farms, supply chain efficiency, and precision agriculture. In FY 2021, private equity funds invested $2.1 billion in Indian agri-food startups. This was 97% more than in financial year 2020. The money went to 189 deals, according to Ag Funder. The number of deals was 37% higher than the previous financial year. For the first time, the number of deals in upstream sector, that is in startups engaged with farms and farmers, was more than in the downstream sector, that is in startups providing services to groceries and restaurants and their customers. Our guest is Mark Khan, managing partner of Omnivore Partners, which has been funding Indian agri-tech startups since 2012. His investment portfolio comprises 33 entities, and it has invested about $90 million. Mark has more than 15 years of experience in the Indian agricultural sector, including 6 years with Godrej Agrovet. Mark, welcome to this interview, and thanks for making the time.
Vivian, it's a pleasure to be here. And just for simplification, Omnivore is just Omnivore. We dropped the Omnivore Partners a few years back, so people just know us as Omnivore.
All right, okay. So let me start by getting granular. You know, Indian agribusiness marketplaces were quite active from an investor point of view in FY 2021. Then they got $318 million in the last financial year, about the same as in financial year 2020. Now, Omnivore has funded two of them, Bijak and Dehat. Does investor interest in online agricultural trading platforms reflect their popularity among farmers?
So I think it's useful to think about marketplaces and platforms in a slightly different way. We have 6 subsectors that we at Omnivore believe exist in Indian agriculture, themes for investment that are all very different. And we would not put Bijak and Dehat in the same theme at all, right? So the 6 themes that we have are farmer platforms and fintech, that's 1. Agri B2B marketplaces is 2. Farm to consumer brands is 3. Precision agriculture is 4. Post-harvest technologies is 5. And agri-food life sciences is 6. Going to the first 2, there is a pretty big difference between a farmer platform and a B2B agri marketplace. A farmer platform is focused on solving the problems of the farmer. They are focused whether on the input side, the output side, financing, advisory, storage, etc. So they are farmer-centric. B2B agri marketplaces have a different customer. They might work a little bit with farmers, but most B2B agri marketplaces, whether you're talking about, Bijak or Waycool or NinjaCart, right, or others, are basically focused on a retailer or an artiya or a trader. That's their customer. They might source from farmers, but their customer, the thing that determines whether they live or die as a business, is the middleman. They are middlemen-centric businesses, right? If you think about NinjaCart, right? NinjaCart sources from farmers, pays a price for it, right? But ultimately, their customer are small retailers in Indian cities. Waycool is the same. Horeca, for example. And so, this question about, first of all, are investors interested, but are farmers not interested, right? I think is a false one, because in general, most of the B2B agri marketplaces, which source from farmers, are really focused on solving the problem of a retailer. And so sometimes they'll source from farmers and sometimes they'll source from traders, and they don't actually care. Let's be clear, right? They're focused on the middle of the value chain.
No, Mark, in the case of BJEC, for example, it just provides a platform. It doesn't buy itself.
Not at all.
It brings the buyers and the sellers together.
And Bijak is not farmer focused, right? Bijak will tell you that Bijak is focused on solving the problem of traders and artias and brokers. They're a digital solution for the middle of the value chain, right?
So they are a B2B platform.
Yes, absolutely. Dehat is a farmer platform. And if you look at the other farmer platforms, right, I would say, probably the largest is Dehat, and then you've got some others like AgroStar, you've got Gramophone in Madhya Pradesh, you've got Big Hot, you have some sectoral ones like Aqua Connect in aquaculture, or Resha Mandi in silk. There are certainly more, I'm sure, that we can all think of and mention. Those are focused on working with farmers. And, what I would say is, Dehat's getting on 1 million farmers on its platform. I can't speak to the others, but a few 100K and lots of them, right? So if the question is like, oh, there's money coming into this, but farmers are not working with it, like, it's nonsense. Farmers are working with these businesses. Let's be clear, though. Most of these businesses.
Mark, just let's talk to the point. The point I'm asking you is that, see, in India we have a problem with farmers not being able to expand their reach. They sell in the local mandis. And one of the aims of the government has been to expand the reach through ENAM, that's the Electronic National Agricultural Market, which was inaugurated in April 2016. Okay, but the main problem there is contract enforcement and dispute settlement. Do online platforms like Dehat, for example, or Waycool offer those services? How do they ensure that the contracts are adhered to, that the quality promised has been delivered to remote buyers? Or, if there's a payment default, how do they resolve it? Do they take money in escrow?
So again, I think you're confusing these two spaces, right? So Dehat is very, very different from Bijak, right? You just listed a bunch of farmer platforms, right?
Mark,
which is not fighting with ENAM.
Mark, don't get confused about, I'm not confusing them. What I'm saying is that you have a platform which brings farmers and buyers together. How do they enforce contract? Please answer that question. How do they enforce contracts? How do they resolve disputes?
Because in most of the market linkages provided by the farmer platforms, the actual platform buys from the farmer and then turns around and sells it. So the platform itself is settling the trade, right? So it's not ENAM, right? The platform itself, Dehat, is buying from farmers, then turning around and selling to someone else, right?
But what about Bijak? Does Bijak buy, or just
again, Bijak doesn't buy from farmers for the most part, right? This is the distinction that I'm making.
But Bijak brings together farmers and
Bijak
traders.
Mostly brings together traders with other traders. Farmers can sell onto the platform. This is the distinction that I was making earlier. Is the difference between the farmer platforms and the B2B marketplaces is that the farmer platforms are mostly working with farmers and having to take on the challenges of working with farmers, whereas you have B2B marketplaces that are really just digital platforms that are, connecting to people, right? And of course, they have to provide settlement, and of course, they have to ensure quality, and they do all of that. I mean, let's be clear. I don't think there's anyone that thinks ENAM is a success in 2022. I don't think the government thinks it is
not a success for the reason that you need to set up assaying and grading facilities.
Yes.
And also you require third-party certification. And when I was speaking to the managing director of a small farmer agribusiness consortium, which manages ENAM, she said that one of the problems they faced was getting people to operate those assaying and grading facilities in remote areas. So they have a problem over there. What I'm asking you is that, have online trading platforms been able to solve the problems of the regulated mandis?
I think they've been able to solve some of the problems of some of the regulated mandis. Again, I think the distinction, that one thing that I'm sort of hearing is, why has this sector, which has really been around about 5 years, right, not solved everything, right? It's one of these, and I've seen this lately, this kind of mindset, right? It's like, this sector that first started getting real funding in 2018, oh my God, it's been 4 years. Why is the problem of poverty not solved yet? It's like, really? How many
No, no,
decades
no, no,
have
no.
we
Mark,
given
Mark,
have
no,
we
no, Mark, we
given
are
the
not.
Sarkari
No, no,
loan?
no. I mean, we understand the problem. We know that it cannot be solved overnight. What I'm saying is it making a difference, at least
Yes.
in certain pockets, and can that be scaled up?
So if you were to ask where is it making a difference, I think the farmer platforms are making a huge difference in the states where they operate. And if you look at where the farmer platforms are active, they are active in Bihar, they're active in Rajasthan, they're active in Madhya Pradesh, in Maharashtra, in Gujarat. To some extent they're not active. No one's in Punjab. Okay. Very few people, very less is in Haryana because of the dominance of the mandis in those states. And there's just, you can't even really do it. And they're all starting to go into the South as well. Right. So I think the answer is, in general, in certain states, you're seeing good penetration of farmer platforms that are helping farmers buy less expensive and higher quality inputs, that are helping them with financing, that are helping them with outputs. I think you have, again, B2B marketplaces that are working pan-India, but, that are not as farmer focused, nor necessarily should they be. There's a big midstream problem to solve as well. And then I think if the question is, where is precision agriculture happening?
No, we'll come to precision agriculture later on. I'm talking about, we are on the issue of marketplaces. Yeah. What I'm saying is, have these online marketplaces been able to expand the market for farmers, because they would want better prices for their produce, and they want to sell beyond the locality, their local area.
Yeah, so I believe that where you see the 5, 6, 7 farmer platforms that have been able to raise, say, more than $5 million, then yes, you would be seeing farmers that are selling well beyond their locality.
I was speaking to the founder of BJEC, and he was saying that they don't have assaying and grading facilities, but what they do is they have a system of rankings and they use algorithms. And if a seller, for example, has consistently honored contracts, then they get a higher ranking. Similarly, in the case of buyers, and that is how they have been able to enforce good behavior.
Yep.
Your comment?
No, I think it's working very well for them. Again, because Bijak is not buying from farmers, right? They're mostly not buying from farmers. They have a couple of large farmers that sell into them, but mostly they're a trader to trader marketplace.
Mm-hmm. So how are they able to, what kind of benefits are they able to offer to the traders, which our physical markets don't?
They're able to offer more buyers for what the traders want to sell. They're able to offer options for financing. They're able to offer right logistics services. They're working on a variety of solutions that facilitate trade.
Mm-hmm. Now, some of the companies that Omnivore has funded take the drudgery out of farming. For example, Stellap's Technologies, it strives to improve milk productivity, quality, and safety with devices on cows and cans and at collection centers, and bulk chilling points and so on and so forth. Now, Ranjit Mukundan, who is the CEO of the company, told me that data thrown up by these devices helps, for example, in inseminating the cows at peak ovulation to minimize failed attempts. Similarly, sitting and standing positions of the cows apparently throws up information which is useful for feed management. Okay, but when I spoke to one of the biggest private dairies, and I will not name that dairy, they were not quite enthused.
Okay.
So who are the people who use these applications?
When Stellap started out, they were largely focused on selling technology to dairy companies. Essentially an integrated set of sensors and tools that brought transparency and quality into the dairy collection system. Stellap's of late has been very focused on becoming a dairy aggregator themselves. And actually is now a milk supplier to many, many buyers, because they realized that there was a limit to the scale you could reach as simply an equipment supplier in this space. And so they've become a B2B dairy in their own right. Okay. And I think that's sort of a statement about how full stack solutions are scaling faster, perhaps, than sort of deep tech solutions. at least
Mhm.
in Indian agri-tech. But Stellups is doing very, very well.
Mhm. Now, another startup, Eruvaka, which is Vijayawada based, it helps in remote monitoring of shrimp farms. I would
Yep.
imagine, they are doing the same service, they're providing the same service to shrimp farms as Stellabs is providing to the dairy industry. So is Eruvaka also, moving from being an equipment supplier to being a supplier of shrimps to buyers?
No, it never did. Eruvaka actually remained a deep tech company. We're going to have a major announcement there eventually. But Eruvaka actually does most of their sales outside of India, which most people don't realize. Eruvaka did, will probably this year do some 200 or 300 crore of business, but largely in Latin America and Southeast Asia.
Now, you mentioned about precision agriculture earlier on. And I was just before this interview, I was speaking to a person from Mumbai, a PhD, doctorate from IIT, who's developed affordable moisture sensors. And
Mm.
she was telling me, that despite being many times more affordable than the imported ones, she has not been able to make much of a headway because farmers who do agriculture on broad acres, they do not, they're not particularly concerned about moisture and water conservation,
Yeah.
unlike, for example, horticultural farmers who are perhaps much more conscious about conserving water. What is your sense?
My sense is that Eskimos don't buy a lot of ice cream. If you look at where globally, not just in India, you find a lot of precision agriculture solutions around water conservation, it's in horticulture. How many hectares of drip irrigated non-horticulture do we have in India? I would say it's negligible. I think in general, where I would expect to see these solutions deployed is horticulture. We have a portfolio company, Fossil, right? That has systems on about 40,000 acres in India. But it's all horticulture. I think throwing our hands up in the air and saying, "Oh no, why are non-irrigated Tourdal farmers not using IoT and soil tensiometers?" is like, you just answered your own question.
So similarly, I think palm oil plantations also, I think, are going in India particularly, are going to use
Oh,
these
absolutely, they
sensors.
are. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I have no doubt on
Mhm.
that one.
Have you been are palm oil plantations among your customers, among the customers of your startups that are into precision agriculture?
I think they're chatting with some of them for sure. I don't think it's been an area of focus. I mean, there's only about I've worked in oil palm in my Goldridge days, so I know the space reasonably well. It's only about 2 lakh hectares, not more, and there are challenges with investment, but I think that space is beginning to see digital technology coming into it finally now.
Mhm. I also like what AgNext, which is one of your startups, is doing using infrared, near infrared spectroscopy and AI-enabled data analytics to give quick and inexpensive test reports on, say, the oil content in mustard or the moisture content in tea leaves. These technologies can help sellers fetch better prices and also reassure farmers. What has been your experience over there? I mean, what is the kind of market do you foresee for these technologies?
I mean, AgNext is an omnivore portfolio company. It's not one of the ones that I oversee as a partner. But what I would say is that they've been seeing excellent opportunities to bring their NIR technology into spaces like animal feed, into tea, into a variety of value chains. And I think people, this kind of portable, decentralized approach to quality is working quite well.
Mhm. Even ARIA collaterals, A to Z, Godam, I think that's a brilliant idea where you make warehouses discoverable. Um, so, what kind of reception has that
I mean, Arya has been
application?
growing like crazy. I mean, I think that's been, there is such a demand for good storage in India that I think that service, and again, the Arya service integrates storage, but also financing and market linkages. I think farmers have found that to be very beneficial.
Mhm. Has the warehouse financing taken off? I mean, you were talking about fintech and all that. Do farmers use warehouse receipts as collateral to
I think that there are
get
a number of
working capital
farmers.
loans?
I think there are, I mean, that's the business model of Arya, and I think Arya has been doing very well. And I think they've seen strong farmer reception for their working capital loans.
Mhm. So, Mark, after investing about $90 million in 33 startups, do you see digital technologies shifting the ground in Indian agriculture?
So I think it's important to understand how we A, define digital technologies, and B, Indian, when people generalize about Indian agriculture, right? We're talking about the lives of, some 130 million people and, a quarter of our economy. I think it requires a double and a triple click on it. I think that precision agriculture is seeing a decent reception in horticulture and in aquaculture and in poultry and in dairy and in the areas of Indian agriculture that have a strong profit pool where farmers make enough of a surplus that they can look at investing into new technologies. I also think that farmer platforms are going even into the parts of Indian agriculture that are less profitable, right? Into the pulses and the grains and the sugar and the more commodity crops and the cotton and the more commodity crops, and are bringing technology to those farmers, but not necessarily as directly, right? Because those farmers, for the most part, don't have the same ability to invest that farmers in the faster and more profitable parts of Indian agriculture do. And so I think you're going to see in the livestock economy and the horticultural economy a faster adoption directly of new technologies. Whereas I think in traditional, right, broadacre crops, you'll see farmer platforms where village level entrepreneurs, where intermediaries are bringing technologies to those farmers, but not necessarily the farmer is paying for the technology themselves.
What about collectives of farmers, like, say, farmer producer companies or cooperatives? How receptive
I
are they to digital technologies too? Because digital technologies enable the aggregation of sellers, and they offer those kind of technologies. So have you had a better reception with the FPOs?
I mean, a lot of FPOs work with Dehat, with Arya, and with many of our other portfolio companies. So certainly, I would say that is working quite well.
Mhm. In a newspaper article you wrote in December, you said that India was lacking in applied research enterprises in transformative agri-food life sciences, enterprises engaged in innovative food or alternative proteins, those that use transgenetics or gene editing technologies. Why is India, lagging in this area? At least, why are the startups not there in these areas?
So I think it's actually a very complicated issue that a lot of people have wrong ideas about. So the point that I would make broadly is if we take, and this isn't just true of agriculture or what we call agri-food life sciences, but the life sciences discipline in general has an almost negligible amount of entrepreneurship in India. If
In
we
India,
were in India, but not globally, right? If I were to look at life sciences globally, you have an incredible amount of entrepreneurship in life sciences in the United States, in the UK, in the Netherlands. It started coming into Singapore, an incredible amount in Israel. India it's conspicuously absent. It is strangely absent. It makes no sense that 1/6 of humanity, right, contributes so little to, except through its diaspora, which is a major, major, major distinction, to life science efforts. And so I think what's interesting about this kind of a market failure, if you will, is when we unpack it a little bit. I think in general, what we see are a couple of challenges. So number one, there is a challenge of talent. And the challenge of talent is this. Life sciences in India are like what everything was in the 70s and 80s. I mean, life sciences in India today are like what digital was in the 70s and 80s. In the 70s and 80s in digital, the best and the brightest did, B-Tech in India, and then got on the next flight and left, and built huge businesses in America and Europe and other places, right? But for the most part, spent the rest of their lives abroad. Some came back eventually post-liberalization, but you had this exodus of talent for decades. And so I think in life sciences in India, that is still actually the case. In the digital and managerial disciplines, right, I would say from kind of 2000 onwards, it has become a two-way street. People do their undergrad in India, do grad school abroad, come back to India, go back abroad. There's a flow of Indian talent to such an extent that you see India contributing the CEOs of Microsoft and Google and Twitter and countless other companies. In the life sciences space, it is still a one-way street. If you are a bright biologist or chemist or biotechnologist, you do your undergrad in India and you go abroad, and very, very, very few people come back. They do not seem to see that opportunity.
Why don't we have that ecosystem that is there in digital technologies? Is it also because the investors who fund these technologies, they are more familiar with digital technology and they're not so much from the life sciences stream?
So I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, honestly. So I think the problem starts with talent, because why would you have investors who are looking at a sector where literally no one is starting up? Why would you have a dedicated, the city of Boston has more Indians doing innovative life sciences research than the entirety of the subcontinent, which we should be horrified about. Right? Like this is a challenging and very broken ecosystem. And I think one piece of it is that we have this outflow of talent. I think the second piece of it is that in general, the top, right? If we look at digital and managerial, right, the path is much more undergraduate degree, MBA, right? Not everyone needed a PhD. Right? Life sciences is all about PhDs. And the reality is PhD programs in India are underfunded, right? And kind of challenging. And so the best and the brightest would almost always prefer to do a PhD abroad, right? If you ask someone, do you want to go to IIM Ahmedabad or Harvard Business School? They're like, I don't know. Actually, both are good options. If you ask them whether they want to go to Harvard for a PhD or ISC, most are going to choose Harvard, right? Or Cambridge. And so
I think
we have a challenge in postgraduate education in the sciences in India that results in our best and brightest almost entirely going abroad and then not seeing opportunities to come back. And so, and this is, again, this is a big problem, but it's not that, there are not enough VCs with life sciences PhDs. There's no deal flow, which is why the second you start having some deal flow, I promise you the VCs will start chasing it and will hire life sciences PhDs. We've started at Omnivore to see the beginnings of this change. And so we are hiring a life science PhD to join our team, right? To drive this, to help build this ecosystem in an initiative that we call Omnix Bio.
Okay, Mark, I wish I could extend this conversation, but we are running out of time. Thank you very much for offering your insights.
Thanks for having me here, Vivian. I really appreciate it. All right.